I love the powerful language of art. I love the way it makes us feel and understand instinctively, how it speaks to us viscerally, on an emotional level. And photography is the tool I use to express the way I experience the world. It translates the way I experience the world in the form of images. So it's my form of communication and understanding. So this photo is used to express the pain and suffering of the human condition, which is important. It reminds us that people are suffering and that we need to help them. But this photo doesn't express the beauty of who he is. It only expresses an experience he's living through. Well, this photo expresses an entirely different perspective. It captures her playful, energetic spirit. It captures the beautiful essence and joy of who she is. I took both of these photos in the downtown east side of Vancouver, Canada, which is an area that's home to hundreds of people living on the streets, suffering from addiction and poverty. And, hold on, I'm just nervous. It's easy to recognize the suffering that people in this neighborhood experience, but my passion is capturing the beautiful joy and essence that exists within all of us, regardless of our circumstances. So I'm going to share with you the story of how I began to use the powerful energy of joy through photography to help shift perspectives and break down barriers and bring people together. And it all started a couple of years ago when I was going through a really difficult time in my life. Things weren't working out for me. I was really stressed out. I wasn't passionate about the work I was doing. I'd been through a difficult breakup and I was really depressed and had been for a really long time. I'd come completely disconnected from who I am and what matters to me. And I felt like I had no purpose or vision in my life at all. So I decided to start over, and I sold everything I owned and went traveling around the world for a couple of years to reconnect to myself and figure out what was important to me. And I made a list of everything that I loved, everything that got me excited about life, that I felt passionate about, things that I wanted to feel, and how I wanted to impact the world. And along the way, we'd do jumping photos with my friends. And it was always a really fun, creative, playful way to express the joy that I wanted to feel in my own life. And one day I was doing jumping photos with a friend and we were laughing and we thought, wouldn't it be fun to just travel around the world doing jumping photos? And the seed was planted. And I decided to make feeling and sharing joy through art the priority in my life. And I started setting up jumping photos, So we're often presented with images that show us the suffering and difficult conditions in the world. And I thought that if I could capture the joyful energy in photos and start sharing it on a mass scale, that maybe it could help inspire more people to feel joy around the world. So I started setting up jumping photos with friends and family and people I met along the way. And I created a blog to start sharing the photos so people could access them around the world. And I soon started to receive emails from people from all over the world who'd found my photos and told me that they were being inspired and felt uplifted by the energy in the images. So I knew I was on the right track. But by this point, I'd completely run out of money, and I was couch surfing around, doing odd jobs just for food and bus fare to try and get to the photo shoots. So I ended up back in Vancouver, which is my hometown, and I met the woman who owns this building in the downtown east side of Vancouver, right beside an alleyway that's renowned for drug use. There's a lot of homelessness there. And she told me I could post my jumping photos up on the wall. So of course I said yes immediately, even though I had no idea how to do that and no money. But I knew I could just figure it out along the way. So I found a printer and a street artist that taught me that the cheapest way to make 4-foot posters was to cut and paste together 11 by 17-inch paper. And I learned on YouTube how to make the glue to paste the photos to the wall. And I started a crowdsourcing campaign, and I was in the alleyway doing photos to promote it when I met James. And he was in pretty rough shape. He had a black eye, he was high on crack, missing his teeth, and he actually looked really shady. And he was kind of blooming around us, checking out the photographer's gear. And he gruffly asked us, like, what are you doing here in the alley? And so I excitedly told him about my project and how I wanted to share joy. And I said, well, hey, why don't you do a jump photo with me? And to my surprise, he did. And it was his idea to do the high five. And I told him he'd be in the paper with me, and his entire demeanor changed, and he smiled, and he told me that it would make his mom really happy. We instantly had something in common, and a barrier had been broken. That joyful little exchange in the alleyway had completely shifted our dynamic, and it changed my perception and the way I now interact with people in this neighborhood. I'd also rented a scissor lift for the first time, which I also had no idea how to use. But luckily, as if on cue, all these guys showed up in the alley that happened to be certified to use the lift, but they were all drunk and high on I don't know what. But one of them went off and found me plywood in a nearby dumpster to level off the uneven ground, and another guy put down his needle so he could make shims to stabilize the lift under the tires so that I was safe. Sorry, I got sidetracked again. I always get emotional at that point for some reason. So the people in the alleyway became my support system. They made me feel safe and welcome in their community. The joyful images spoke to everyone, and it gave us something in common that we could relate to and appreciate. And people would come by and start talking to me in the alleyway, people who are living on the street, shooting up needles right beside me, and struggling just to survive every day. And they'd thank me for making their alleyway beautiful. And some people would even cheer for me and bring me gifts. And then, one day, a little while later, I happened to be going by the mural and discovered it being removed. And I had no warning, so I was really shocked to see all the images falling away from the wall. Hundreds of people had taken time to share joy, and it had become a living part of the community. So I was kind of heartbroken, but with the encouragement from people who'd been following the project, I just decided to make a new mural in the same neighborhood. So about 3 days later, I found this wall, also in the downtown east side, and I knew it was the one immediately. And I just walked straight into the building, found out who owned it, and set out to make it happen. The whole thing started all over again. But this time, I was determined to include people from the downtown east side jumping for joy in the mural. I wanted to show the beauty and kindness that I had experienced from people in the neighborhood while I was making the first mural. I wanted to show them in vibrant color, to show the essence and joy of who they are. And it constantly challenged my own perceptions and judgments on who might want to take part. And I would walk into SROs, which are single room occupancies, to see if I could find people to take part in the project. And I would see people that were withdrawn and, marks in their arms, and withdrawn and no teeth and black eyes and beaten and bruised. And I would ask them, hey, you want to jump for joy? I want to share joy. Do you want to be in my mural? And more times than not, they would say yes, and they would jump for joy with me. I included people with all kinds of addictions, street workers, dumpster divers, people living on the street. But the photos weren't about the experiences they were living through. They were about uplifting each other and bringing people together and sharing joy. And this message resonated with everybody. So this time I was located next to another SRO. And the first person that offered to help me with the photos was Alexander. I'd met him while I was making the first mural, and he was walking through the alley where his partner had overdosed and died to remember him when he came across the mural. And he started to cry, and he hugged me and thanked me for bringing the joyful energy to the area. And we became friends, and his joy became part of my murals. And people would just walk by the location and walk in and ask me what I was doing. And I'd say, hey, I'm sharing joy. Do you want to help me make some posters? And they would come in. And some of them came in almost every day. And they were so excited to be a part of the mural. So I ended up putting together 250 6-foot posters made out of 7,000 individual pieces of 11 by 17-inch paper. And this time I had to get certified because it was a 65-foot boom lift. So there were a lot of obstacles and difficulties along the way, but it was so gratifying to feel the impact and joy that the project had on the community. That ugly, neglected wall had suddenly come to life, and strangers would stop to watch me put the posters up, and they'd stop and talk to each other and take photos of each other jumping in front of the mural. So there were hundreds of people who took part in this project, and to be able to share the joy of all of these people from different parts of the city together in this neighborhood was pretty moving for me and everyone who walked through. So at the opening party, everyone who'd taken part from all over the city, people who'd volunteered and funded the project, came together to celebrate with the downtown East Side community. And it was a chance for people to meet in person and connect. So this project taught me the power of sharing joyful art as a tool and a communication to break down barriers, to bring people together, and to unify us with our similarities and celebrate our differences. And I'm now in the process of starting a nonprofit so that I can continue this work on around the world. So that's my next big move. So I hope that you'll I hope that you'll also feel inspired to feel and share more joy in your own life too, in whatever art form that takes. Because when you feel and express your joy through art, it ripples out and it affects all of us. So thank you for listening.